The sun dipped below the tree line and golden light painted the forest. Chris and Lisa smiled, enjoying the scenery. Their weekend escape had begun. They were driving to Redwood National Park. Lisa had always wanted to see the giant trees. Chris had promised her a romantic getaway. A detour sign appeared, and the road ahead was closed. Chris hesitated, then shrugged. "Let's take the scenic route," he said, turning onto the narrow road. The pavement was rough, and the forest pressed in, sunlight fading fast. Still, they felt happy, excitement building for their adventure ahead. The road twisted and turned. Deeper they drove into the heart of the woods. The sun was gone now, twilight settling in. Lisa checked the map app on her phone.
It's taking longer than I thought. Are you sure we're still on track?
Chris glanced at the GPS,
It's working fine.
though a flicker of doubt crossed his face. He'd seen the twisted oak tree before. Hadn't they passed it 10 minutes ago? He pushed the thought away, focusing on the road. The forest was silent now, except for the crunching gravel beneath the tires. An unnatural stillness settled over them. They rounded a bend. A chill ran down Lisa's spine. It was the same twisted oak, gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. She swore they had passed it twice already.
Chris, I think we're going in circles.
Chris gripped the steering wheel. He recognized the oak too, and the moss-covered rock beside it. The same eerie silence hung in the air. This wasn't right. He tried to stay calm,
It's just a forest, babe. Everything looks the same.
but he knew deep down that something was wrong. Very wrong. The GPS flickered, the screen going blank. Chris tapped it, but it remained dark. Panic clawed at his throat. He needed the GPS. He needed to get them out of here.
What is it?
Lisa asked, her voice trembling. She could sense his fear, and it fueled her own.
GPS is dead.
Chris muttered, more to himself than to Lisa. He checked the fuel gauge. It was broken, the needle stuck on half full. They had filled the tank before leaving. How could this be? The forest seemed to press closer, the trees like silent giants watching them. A cold wind picked up, rustling the leaves with a sound like whispered threats. Section 5. Whispers in the wind. The wind howled, a mournful sound that seemed to echo through the empty woods. Lisa pulled her jacket tighter, fear settling like ice in her stomach.
Chris, I don't like this.
She whispered, her eyes darting around the darkening woods. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every rustle of leaves a whispered warning.
I know, babe.
Chris said, his voice strained. He tried to sound calm, but his heart hammered against his ribs. He rolled down the window, hoping to catch a signal on his phone. The air outside was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else. Metallic, like blood. His blood ran cold. He rolled the window up quickly, as if to shut out the smell of fear. Section 6. The Watcher in the Woods. They rounded another bend. Lisa gasped, pointing a trembling finger. A figure stood in the middle of the road, shrouded in shadow. Chris slammed on the brakes, the car skidding on the loose gravel. He squinted into the darkness. It was difficult to see, but the figure was still there, unmoving.
What is that?
Lisa whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure was tall and slender, almost skeletal, and seemed to melt into the shadows around it. Chris felt a surge of terror he couldn't suppress. He had a sudden, terrifying certainty. They were not alone. They were being watched. The figure took a step closer. Its eyes, two glowing embers in the darkness, fixed on them. Lisa covered her mouth with her hand, stifling a scream. Chris threw the car into reverse, tires spinning on the gravel. He had to get them out of there, away from this road, away from those eyes. He swung the car around, narrowly avoiding a towering oak tree. The engine roared, the car lurching forward. He glanced back. The figure was gone, but the feeling of dread remained, clinging to them like cobwebs. They were trapped in a nightmare, and there was no escape. Chris drove on, desperation fueling his every move. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes. A low-hanging branch scraped against the roof, showering sparks into the darkness. Lisa screamed, her voice high and thin. The car hit something, the impact jolting them violently. They spun out of control, the world a blur of trees and shadows. Then, darkness. Lisa regained consciousness slowly, her head throbbing. She was trapped, her legs pinned beneath the dashboard. "Chris!" she moaned, her voice hoarse. Where was he? Was he all right? The driver's side door creaked open. Chris stumbled out, his face pale and drawn. He rushed to her side, his touch gentle as he checked for injuries. "We have to get out of here," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "This place, it's not right." He managed to free her, and they stumbled out of the wreckage. They were surrounded by the same dense forest, the same oppressive silence. They were still lost. As their eyes adjusted to the darkness, they saw it, a faint glow emanating from the depths of the forest, a light. Hope flickered in Lisa's chest. "Chris, look," she whispered, pointing to the light. "Maybe someone lives there. Maybe they can help." Chris hesitated, his gaze fixed on the eerie light. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, terribly wrong, that they were lost, injured and out of options. The light was their only hope. He took Lisa's hand, and together they walked towards the pulsing glow, unaware of the eyes that watched them from the shadows. The highway of the lost had claimed them.